So this competition is one of the other ones that we primarily compete in, other than eCTF. And you might ask, what is CCDC? Well, CCDC sells itself as a nation's largest college cyber competition. There's quite a few of those, so I'm just going to say it's one of those largest competitions. But essentially, it's a competition where you defend actual networks, like live networks from hackers. The premise there is that you're on a 8-person defense team, plus our team has 4 reserves. And the premise of the actual scenario is that we're inheriting an existing company network. Imagine you're working at some IT consulting company, and I don't know, you acquire like a pizzeria or something like that. And I don't know why they have that many like services on their network, but you're inheriting that entire thing. Uh, while you're inheriting this company network, you have a team of 20 red teamers or hackers actively attacking you. So on top of inheriting and fixing this entire network, you're being actively attacked. And all while this is happening, you need to keep your business running. So if you have like email servers, obviously email is pretty critical to businesses, so you need to keep that running. The competition is pretty basic. It kind of follows, like qualifiers, regionals, and nationals. So we start off with something like practice rounds. They're called invitationals. These are open to all schools, not just the ones in our region. We're on the Western region. I'll talk about those in a bit. But all schools are able to participate in invitationals. So our region, the Western region, always has schools from the Mid-Atlantic. So we have schools like RIT or CMU, MIT, whatever, all those, technical schools with proper cyber programs, they come and compete in WRCCDC. Following invitationals, we have qualifiers, and I'll talk about dates later. But you have to place top 8 in those qualifiers, and I believe our region usually has like 16 teams, so you just need to place top 50, and then you move on to the regionals. Regionals are hosted like a month or 2 later, down in person around the Orange County area. And then if you place first in that, you move on to nationals, and then all the regions kind of compete against each other in nationals. There's also a wild card, kind of like regional, but you usually have to place like second place to get qualified for that. But these are the main regions. We have Pacific Rim up above us. We have Western. We have at large, Rocky Mountain, Southwest, Southeast, Midwest, Mid Atlantic, and Northeast. I believe it's been the norm that the Western region is usually where the national champions come from. So that is why we are kind of like the most difficult regional to be in. So, we have that going for us, I guess. Moving on to the whole thing of what does it mean to inherit a existing company network? Here's the idea. On the right here, we have an existing topology of basically boxes or machines from last year's I believe this was their qualifier. I don't remember. I think this was their regionals, actually. But the network is essentially already set up. So all these machines are already provisioned. They're running all the services on them. You have like web servers, you have databases. They're already up and running. So you don't need to start doing anything. The one catch with this is, as I said, you're inheriting some kind of company network. This network is full of vulnerabilities, bad configurations. For example, people are reusing passwords for every single thing. So you need to go in there and change that. Or they're using insecure methods of, I don't know, data transportation or something like that. Anyways, it's just very messed up. And they did that on purpose just to make you fix these things. You have like unwanted software. Sometimes there'll be even like malware. Things are terribly out of date. You'll have things from like 2000s that you didn't even know existed until you stumble upon them. And your whole job in this scenario is, first of all, take an inventory of what's happening on the network. So figure out what you have, and then secure it while keeping all these services up. Because again, you have to keep the business running. All while you're being under attack of the red team and hackers trying to get into your network. Now, if you're curious of kind of like what this topology means, each device here is an actual machine. And if you didn't know, multiple machines or multiple boxes can host multiple services. So even though you may see like 15 devices here, maybe think about 3 or 4 different services running on each. So you're basically juggling like 50 different services on this single network. An example of that is one of these servers can be running a web server, a database, or like a DNS all together. And some of them are kind of interlinked. So if you kill one service, you could kill like 3 more, and then you get violations for that and you lose points. In addition to this, as I talked about before, a bunch of outdated software. It's not all just Linux and the latest Windows Server. There are very mixed operating systems in this topology. For example, we talk about Windows Server. You might know Windows Server 2022. 2016 is also on there. We've seen that. We've seen 2008. We've seen really weird niche distros like Hannah Montana Linux, Amog OS, Red Star OS, the North Korean one. There's some crazy stuff, but you'll run into operating systems you didn't even know that existed, but they're there. And this is part of the problem of I know how to defend like a modern Ubuntu system, but do you know how to fix like Hannah Montana Linux when the tools that you normally use aren't available on there? So you have to really be quick on your feet and think about how you can harden these very old systems. So every system is like a new challenge. It's part of why cybersecurity is so cool is you'll never run into pretty much the same scenario again. There are some like kind of meta stuff you can do with some of the Windows stuff, some of the Linux stuff. There's automated stuff there. But a lot of the time you'll run into something that like is inhumanly unthinkable when it comes to actually what's running there. For example, they tricked us into thinking that we were like running Windows on a machine. Turns out it was like Windows. Yeah. So it was like a Linux system that was very much like trying to make itself look like Windows as much as possible. It even had OneDrive on it, which was like crazy. They'll do things like, as I talked about, configuring it very badly. They'll make your terminal red and yellow colors so you can't read any of the text or make it Italian to make your job easier. Just think if you're like an IT person and you really, really hate the place you work at and you really want to mess that up, like their whole system up so no one can fix anything, and just apply that to this giant network. And that's basically what you come up with. And part of this process is that you don't really get much documentation of what's running. You get the basic idea of, hey, these are the machines on the network. They're roughly in these subnets and all that stuff. But other than that, you don't get much documentation. So in addition to fixing all these services, you have to first find them and you have to make documentation around that. And you don't have much time to do that. So you might need to spend like 15 minutes doing scans of systems, figuring out what's on there, and quickly identifying, hey, is this a high priority fix for me right now, or is this low priority? So this is part of one of the challenges of inheriting an existing company network. So this kind of sums up kind of like what the competition is. So we're going to talk about how you actually win this competition. So there's 3 main categories. Mainly it's services. These are basically automated service checks or, keeping your business running, things like that. You get something called an SLA violation, which is like a service level agreement. I don't know, your company is promising like, 99.99% uptime. If you violate that and you're at 98% uptime, you get penalties and then you lose points in this competition. Another category of scoring here is injects. This is the other largest portion, which is basically business tasks from the white team. The white team is like the administrators from this competition, so don't get confused by that. But essentially, you're graded on the quality and timeliness of you completing these business tasks, and we'll talk about what these tasks are. But essentially, you need to implement different things like, hey, they want you to install a VPN service for all their customers or employees, things like that. That's an example of a business task. We're taking inventory of what's running on your stuff. The third category is going to be orange team. Basically, this is how well can you role play with other people pretending to be a customer. So you kind of have to, put on your customer service voice whenever they call you on like a landline phone, and you have to say, "Oh yes, we can help you with that request. Just give us a moment, and we'll get you going." And they'll give you like random tasks of, "I can't log into my email. Can you help me reset my password?" Things like that. And then red team, this isn't a category, but you get penalties for this. But basically, if the hackers or hackers, red team, are able to exploit your system and get inside, exfiltrate data, things like that, you get penalties. So that's another major category. This is an example of last year's regional service dashboard. So all these rows are different teams. We had 28 teams during, I think this was actually qualifiers. Yeah, sorry. This is qualifiers. They had 28 teams during qualifiers. The top team, I believe, is like testing team, or the bottom one. I don't know. But there's a few that are not actual teams, but this is roughly the competition that we have during qualifiers. And then these columns are services that you need to keep up. In this case, we need to keep 20 different services up. We have things like web services, DNS services. We have like web streams or like camera feeds that we need to keep up. If they hack into your camera and move it around or something like that, you get penalized. So there will be like actual hardware when it comes to regionals and things like that they'll get into. One year we had them like hack our camera and then like annoy us with the speaker on it. And by the rules of the competition, we're not allowed to just unplug it because we're role playing as a business and this camera is mounted on the ceiling. So imagine if a hacker gets into like a camera in the ceiling and it has a microphone and speaker, and you get these business calls, giving people password resets. You have to give them the password over the phone. They can listen in and get into that. And that's kind of the whole realistic thing of, there's actual people interacting with others. But you can see that, some teams have everything down. Some teams have most of their stuff up. This is what you're juggling when you're doing this, services stuff. All right, moving on to inject. So essentially, I said these are business tasks. There's usually like 12 a day. So 12 over like a invitational or qualifier. During regionals, it's more like 20 over the 2 days that we actually compete. The biggest thing is the timeliness. So if you don't submit or you don't complete this inject, at all, partially or whatever, you get no points. So you have to deliver something by 12:30 if they ask for it by 12:30. And they basically score it on like quality and completeness. So did you actually implement what you were saying? Did you provide screenshots and documentation of how you actually did it? All while making it in a professional format. So kind of like a business report, you have to use the official company branding that you're working under. And there's a ton of different tasks. Mainly it's documenting and doing like policies because you're giving these reports to what we call the C-suite, or kind of like the CEO of the company. You want some, I don't know, weird change on a website, you have to do that. You have to document how you did it, and then you have to make it a professional and well-rounded report. Other things, system changes. Let's say they want to move, I don't know, a server, like a web server from this one machine to another machine. They're going to ask you create a migration plan or something like that and say how you're going to do it. And then they'll ask you to actually implement it. So can you implement it while documenting it the whole time? Incident reports, that's another one. So if your system gets hacked, you're actually able to do incident reports of, hey, we got hacked, but we know how they got in. And if you're able to show or prove that you know how they got in, show them screenshots of, I don't know, logging software that you installed, showing that here's the IP that it came from, you can get some of those penalties reduced when it comes to final scoring. There's other tasks like presentations. We have to record videos occasionally, things like that. So maybe like a CTO or a CFO will ask the company to make a presentation of some new solution that we're going to be using in our network. We have to do that, and then it will actually get graded by real people saying, hey, are they professional, things like that, while presenting. And it's on different topics, sometimes technical, sometimes not, but it really depends. Some examples in the past is creating a new password policy. So as I said before, some of the systems we're inheriting are very misconfigured and everyone is like using the same password. So a CTO might ask us, hey, implement a new password policy for all our employees and then implement this change within like our directory. So every time a employee logs back onto the system, they're forced to adhere to this new password policy. And this is where you get really technical, but you also have to put on your writer's hat and actually write out a policy that's understandable to most employees that are not technical, right? Some of these employees could be like janitors and it has to be understandable to them. Other examples are network inventory. You have to take a inventory of all the machines and all the services that they're running. If there is some unknown machine, you have to explain why it's there or why it's not being used, things like that. Here's an example inject of setting up a VPN that we got in qualifiers. I don't know why I keep putting regionals here, but this is quals. Last year, basically, they said, oh, we want our delivery teams, quote unquote, to be able to reach our site access or whatever. Talk about 3 different VPN solutions. And then once you pick one, install it on your server, make documentation of how you set it up, how you upgrade it, how people can connect, things like this. And you have like a few hours to do this, but you're also juggling all those attackers coming onto your system. So you're juggling multiple things. And this is an example of one additional thing you have to consider is not only are you defending your network, but you're also spinning up new things and configuring. You could already have a VPN on your network, and you have to figure out how it doesn't clash with this current system. So, there's a lot going there. Orange team is kind of, we said this 20%, but they're kind of extension of that whole service stuff. So basically what they are is they're officials from the competition that role play as employees or customers or whatever, and they do manual service testing. So maybe they'll log on to like an email server and try and send an email. And if it doesn't work, they're going to contact you. But in regionals, it's on a landline, but during qualifiers, they'll join a Discord and you always have to be, someone has to be monitoring that voice chat at all times, like a real, IT operations center. But essentially, they'll test a bunch of different functionality because service checks are only so limited when it comes to actually checking if services are up. They're going to be checking the actual usability of all the services that you're talking about, you're trying to host. Here's an example of what not to do. If Orange Team asks you to like do a blog or something and you don't have it up within, a certain amount of time because you're too busy defending your network, don't send them like a screenshot of like you ain't getting no blog. This happened at like the past invitationals that happened like a week or 2 ago. So I don't know. This was funny to see, but essentially this is what you're doing when it comes to Orange Team. Is you're just kind of talking with them like you would a real customer, but obviously, you don't do this in a business. And then that last one is Red Team. So as I said before, Red Team is basically a team of hackers. Usually there's like 20 in WRCCDC. And not all 20 are attacking you at once. They're attacking like the 28 teams competing. So it's a little distributed. But these are like actual trained people. There are people that have participated in the competition before. There are people that have actually worked for like government as like real hackers and all that stuff. So they're trained in the sense of they've been in your position before and they know what to look for. And there's a cool blog of red teaming at National CCDC. You can look that up online. But they'll do various things. They'll apply all the cool hacking stuff you see on Kali Linux against your machines, your entire network, and all that stuff. And they rotate all their IPs. So you can't just block an IP and say, wow, we stopped that hacker, because your entire business has to be accessible by the public internet. So you're never going to be able to fully turtle and block everyone from accessing it. While you fix stuff, you need to keep your business running. And yeah, it's a whole nightmare. And if they get into your system, you get a bunch of penalties. Here is a graph showing kind of the penalties you get. For example, if they get system access and they get like a regular user account, it's like minus 25 points. If they're able to exfiltrate customer PII or personally identifiable information, such as names, date of birth, things like that, you get minus 200. And these stack. So here's an example that they have in their documentation of here's a system, or here's a scenario where a successful attack yields a system breach of classified systems, quote unquote, for the scenario we're doing, that causes a dump of Active Directory hashes followed by the decryption of said hashes, leading to a user login finalized by privilege escalation to administrator. So they're basically saying that they got into the admin access after dumping all the credentials of all your users. And you can see you get penalties for all these different things. And this one incident will cause you minus 825 points, which is a really big, mess up in that. In addition to breaking in, they might, spin down certain services. So in addition to that, you'll have service violations because now your services are offline because Red Team took down DNS and websites can't resolve to the correct, IP addresses on your network. So, you have to juggle a lot of things. Some other skills you need in addition to this, interfacing with customers, quote unquote, scanning networks, you need to really pre-plan. And this is the biggest thing we're going to be working on is building autonomous scripts before the competition happens, because we're able to bring a repository of tools with us that have to be public, by the way. So every school published their own automation playbooks and all that stuff, but you have to basically come up with plans for every single scenario that you might run across. And we call these like hardened playbooks. So Ansible scripts, things like that. You have to create incident response templates because getting, attacked is pretty much like always going to happen. Every team has attacks happening on their system, even like the top ones. So if you can set up a incident response or detection system and figure out how they got into your system, you can create a incident response, document and get like 50% of those points reduced in the penalties for red team. And then you need to think like a red teamer, right? Even though that this is a cyber defense competition, you kind of need to think like a hacker. You need to look for vulnerabilities while you're patching these systems, mainly in application security, even though this is not the job of most like network engineers or sysadmins when they're running a company enterprise network. You'll need to peek into, hey, what is this menu ordering website for our restaurant running? Uh-oh, there's some kind of like backdoor in it, or it's not properly handling this SQL query so they can do, SQL injections, things like that. And you need to actively be scanning all your machines and boxes for different services and vulnerabilities. So you need to do all that. And the biggest thing is time management. I just mentioned like 4 different tasks that you have to do at the same time. You really need to balance, actually hardening your systems and fixing them versus keeping your business running. Because at the end of the day, if your services are down, you're losing points. And if you're not completing your injects, which are those business tasks I talked about, you're not going to win the competition because you're not getting anything done. So you need to balance both things. But remember, you have 8 people on your team. So, you have to balance who's doing what. All while this is happening, there's multiple deadlines. They're kind of staggered where I think it's like 30 minutes to an hour between each task, but they have multiple tasks going on at the same time. So you might have 2 open injects while a red team is trying to get into your domain controller while you're trying to fix this SSH error on like one machine. So you have to juggle a lot of different things. And when I'm talking about application security, here's an example that I just pulled from like our Discord chat of the qualifiers, where this was just like some random menu ordering app web server that we were running. And you could see there's like something of start SSH. Why does a menu app need to, allow enabling SSH on a server or stopping it? So this is an example of application security where you see this as a sysadmin and you just remove it to, reduce the attack vector. So these are all examples of what this competition kind of includes. This is the season for 2026 for CCDC. There was already an invitational that happened, but because we're a UC, well, most of the teams are in our region, but it has passed. Next regional is going to be November 2nd. Next one, November 15th. There's two in December, one in January. The actual qualifiers are going to be in February, and then regionals happen in March, and they're going to be at Cal Poly Sonoma. So, a cool thing, if you didn't know, the club will like fly everyone out for regionals. So we take a whole weekend basically just to go out there and compete. It's a fun event, a lot of team bonding. So if you're interested in like competing in this stuff, we're going to talk about, the working group interest form. So the biggest thing is that this competition is very limited. We only have 8 slots for the team, and most of that is kind of already reserved for the existing, team that we've built up because we want to keep like, winning. But in the working group, we want to, teach new people of, hey, here's how you defend a, entire network from attackers and all that stuff. And even that is a bit capped because we only have so much resources and we want to keep it like close knit. Everyone is sitting next to each other, working, things like that. So we have a cap of 15. The one thing that we do say is going to be mandatory, and I'll take questions in a bit, is that attendance is going to be mandatory. And the reason for this is because we have to pay for these invitational. They're $100 each. So, we're spending money on doing this competition. We spend money on the equipment that we use to practice. So if we buy equipment that was made for, practicing and you don't show up, it kind of goes to waste, right? So if of course there's like exceptions, right? You're sick, you can't come. Don't come to the meeting if you're sick or whatever. Just give us a notice. Otherwise, you're going to be dropped from the group, and then you're going to be like, oh no, I missed like a month's worth of meetings, and now I don't have access to practice all this stuff. Well, you got dropped. Now we are going to say that there's no experience necessary because I think LLMs and all that stuff have made it really easy to get into cyber if you're very new and, we have other people to guide you. But the thing is, don't over depend on like AI to help you in this stuff because during the actual competitions, we don't have access to that. We're on like a network that is being logged, and you're not allowed to log into private services that are like paid or things like that. So you can't log into your like Anthropic account. It's Claude or ChatGPT for this competition. They monitor the network, right? As I talked about, these are experienced people. They know what they're doing when they're talking about monitoring the network. So you kind of also can't rely on other people because other people are, doing tasks. So you kind of have to be independent on this. So when I say no network or no experience necessary, it is going to be like a very chill session in the sense of we're not expecting much from you as long as you're learning something new, but we want you to become dependent after these working sessions. So with that being said, are there any questions about CCDC? Yes. Is it? I can't see that. Oh, it's this again. All right. Wow. I allow. Yeah.
Okay. I can answer questions here and in Zoom while we fix the form. If anyone has any questions about either competition. Hopefully you just minimize the Zoom chat so I can't see it.
Yeah. There's no chats yet.
Are there any questions here?
All right. Should be open. I'll send this in Zoom chat as well. All right, so that's been CCDC. Have any questions? Just ask in the Discord. We have our first working group session tomorrow. I forget what time, but it's on the event calendar. So you can, our website domain /events, you can find it on there. But yeah, this is a really fun competition. It is very limited, so it's kind of unfortunate that, not too many people can participate, but you have to be a full-time student while this competition is going on, so keep that in mind. Grad students are welcome to participate, but yeah, very, very fun competition. With that being said, always get our events calendar /events. If there's no questions in Zoom, we'll end it there, and then I guess we're gonna just talk offline in this meeting room. Any questions in Zoom before we end it? All right. That is our cue. All right, so meeting is over. If you guys want to talk.